Hi and welcome back to my channel. So today we are reacting to a video called How Israel Will Collapse by Uncivilized channel. Now, before we even get into this, I just want to say that this is obviously a really serious and sensitive topic. There's a lot of history, a lot of pain, and a lot of people affected on both sides. Personally, I always try to come into these videos with an open mind, but I also think it's important to acknowledge the humanitarian side of what's going on, especially the suffering that Palestinians have been going through for a long time. So I'm curious to see what this video actually argues, whether it's factual, biased, or just straight up clickbait. So if you want to subscribe, comment, like, you know what to do. And without further ado, let's watch and react.
Israel will not last forever. From the outside, it can look like a fortress, heavily armed, unbreakable, a solid structure. But power and permanence are not the same thing. And the cracks are already visible.
We support Israel's interest, not America's interest.
Yeah, I don't know how to say this. I've discovered this America-Israel connection quite recently. I didn't know there was this relationship between these two countries. I don't know, maybe because now with the Trump administration, I'm more invested in what's going on because, I mean, hello! So it's very interesting. It's very interesting.
No one wants to fight for Israel!
Wow.
Even Israelis are saying it.
Almost a civil war, right, left, religious, others.
What we have is the collapse of Israeli society.
The trend is towards the collapse of Zionism.
So what actually keeps Israel afloat? Like any settler colony, it depends on 5 key pillars to survive. Each one is a card holding the structure up. If those foundations start to crumble, the entire structure becomes unstable. And today, every one of them is under pressure.
Yeah.
Every country has allies, but Israel has a lifeline. For decades, the settler colony has been kept afloat by US support, military, financial, and diplomatic. The US sends Israel around $3.8 billion in military aid every year, besides the $16 to $22 billion given over the course of the genocide. It pays for Israel's missile defense systems, covers for its genocidal war crimes, allows it to act with impunity.
We stand with Israel!
Oh my god, look at this. Holy crap. That side of the Democratic Party in America is shameful. Shameful.
And carries out its wars.
News strikes across Tehran tonight as the US-Israeli war on Iran is expanding.
And for a long time, it felt like American support would be permanent. But then, the genocide in Gaza began. And as Americans began to see what their government was supporting and what their own tax dollars were paying for, public opinion...
Look at this. They have completely destroyed a country. Cities. Look at this. This is embarrassing. This should scare everybody.
and started to shift.
Pro-Palestinian protesters refusing to dismantle their tents.
Doused himself in a liquid before setting himself on fire. He shouted, "Free Palestine," several times.
Sir, can we ask you America first or Israel first?
Israel first.
Israel first?
I don't think we're just sending money to a place. I do believe that our country is owned by Israel.
For the first time ever, Amid
Why everybody is taking clips from that man, that creep? I cannot stand him. What's his name? Theo Van I don't know, I don't care.
majority of Americans sympathize with Palestinians over Israelis, especially the young ones. These are today's voters and tomorrow's policymakers, journalists, and donors. The more they turn on Israel today, the less Israel is guaranteed its lifeline tomorrow.
We have to secure that part.
Look at this motherfucking piece of shit. I hope you die badly and they bomb your house with everything they have and you're gonna end up bleeding from your big ears. Look at him. He looks like Dumbo.
The base of our support in the United States, that is being challenged. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is TikTok. TikTok, number one.
And with the Epstein files, more and more Americans are waking up to how occupied the US actually is, and how deep Israel's grip on American media and politics really goes. And the awakening is only growing.
The first senior official has resigned from President Trump's administration over Iran. It's clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel.
Who is in charge of our policy in the Middle East?
Israel got us into this war.
There was no imminent threat to the United States of America.
And if our money and our weaponry or any type of our ammunitions are being used to...
I think that the political structure of the USA should be revised, should be modified, because the president has too much power. And when you have people like Obama, real political figure with integrity, it's fine. But when you have a piece of crap like Donald Trump, things are very different and dangerous. So maybe, less power to the president of the United States, because little Trumps are growing up and they might end up in power tomorrow. So...
for innocent people, especially women and children.
But we did it because we have some good allies there. We have some great Middle Eastern countries there, Israel there.
No one wants to fight for Israel!
They broke...
That's one part of the story.
Have you heard that crack? That crack was his harm. Wow. Oh my God, girl.
The other part of the story is that the war is going very badly, and hardly anyone I know can see how we come out of this winning. So if Israel is seen to be responsible for pulling us into a losing war, this will be, I think, disastrous for the lobby.
There's another part of American society that Israel is losing that would cost them dearly: the support of US Jews. The number of young American Jews supporting Palestine over Israel is growing, and this is a huge problem.
Israel certainly needs the United States, and it certainly needs American Jewry to promote Israel's case in the United States.
American Jews and American Zionist organizations are an integral part of the settler colony's infrastructure through fundraising, advocacy, and settlement. When Israel loses the support of young American Jews, it is not only losing political allies, it is losing part of the human pipeline that sustains the project itself. Because without a steady flow of settlers, the entire project begins to unravel. And it's already happening.
I really know very little about this. I should be ashamed of myself, because just now I'm like waking up, but this is a serious matter.
It's called Aliyah, Hebrew for going up, or immigrating to Israel.
To be a settler colony, you need settlers. And to be a settler colony that is constantly expanding and stealing more and more land.
No, this is the promise of God to the patriarchs of the Jewish nation.
No.
You need even more settlers.
You're a and you should go yourself.
To take over more land, to be in its occupation forces, and to control what it sees as a demographic threat. If you look at the population of Israel, it seems like Jews are a demographic majority, which they need to be to keep control and be a Jewish nation state. But these stats don't take into account the millions of Palestinians Israel occupies and controls. When you include them in the calculation, then you have a very different picture.
A demographic shift while Israel continues occupying the Palestinian West Bank might mean the country is forced to choose between being Jewish or democratic.
But Israel isn't getting as many settlers as it once did. And not only that, it's losing settlers it already had.
Yeah, a lot of people is leaving Israel. I met a lot of Israelis in Germany, Berlin. A lot of young Israeli are leaving because they are against their own state and laws. So
over 25% of Israeli Jews are considering leaving the country. The number of Israelis moving abroad has more than doubled since 2023. And thousands are applying for passports. There are two reasons for this. The first is a question of safety. Israel has long upheld the myth that it is unbeatable and invincible, with its supposedly powerful military and its impenetrable Iron Dome. And this is a necessary illusion, because one of Zionism's main arguments is that Israel must exist as the only safe place for Jews in the world. But for the past few years, the resistance from Gaza and the south of Lebanon, and now Iran, have proven how false that myth is.
Wow, look at that. That's crazy. That is crazy.
Maintaining this illusion is essential to the Zionist state, which is why they have a military censor that controls what information and what images can get out, and why most people aren't seeing how badly they're being hit.
Wow, look at that.
But the settlers are seeing it all. After the war on Gaza began, departures from the settler colony surged by 400% in that month alone, compared to October 2022.
Iran is now providing an effective challenge to the very existence of Israel. We'll see how many Israelis want to remain.
Oh my God.
But safety isn't the only reason Israelis are leaving the colony. The truth is, the unraveling began long before October 7th. For years, Israeli generals, intelligence officials, and political leaders have warned that the greatest threat to Israel doesn't come from the outside. It comes from within. From the slow collapse of the one thing the project depends on most: Israeli society. Social cohesion, the sense that a society shares common identity and a common vision for the future, is generally one of the foundations of a stable country.
Every society is divided in one way or another. I mean, essentially, that is the human condition. But what we find in Israel is that the extent of the division is stark.
Almost a civil war, right, left, religious, others.
An estimated 300,000 citizens marching Saturday.
There is like the place where peace and religion should be the only thing is where wars, hate, crime against each other are committed the most. That is crazy to me. We live in the future. We have crazy technologies, but we cannot live in peace. We have to be in war. We have to hate each other. This is crazy. And for what? For who? For three that are making things bad for everybody. Trump, Putin, and Netanyahu. These three are everything up for everybody else. I don't know.
Inability of the Jewish society to find a common base for their idea of what a Jewish state means.
To understand this tension, we have to look at the groups that make up Israeli society. The largest group are the Haloni, the so-called secular Jews, making up 40 to 50% of the population. They dominate Israel's tech sector and form the backbone of the economy and the military. They're generally non-religious Zionists and see being Jewish as a cultural identity and Israel as a liberal democracy with Western values.
No democracy, no high-tech. Under this slogan, hundreds of those working in the Tel Avivian high-tech sector.
We're the ones supporting all of the taxes that are not paid by other groups in the Israeli society.
At the opposite end of the spectrum are the Haredi. They're the ultra-Orthodox and most conservative.
Only around half work official jobs, and though they contribute fewer taxes, they're often entitled to more state support because of their low income.
Since Israel's founding, military service has been mandatory for most Jews, but the Haredis were exempt if they were in full-time religious studies.
Focused on a long-standing grievance, the inequality between the ultra-Orthodox and other parts of Israeli society.
They don't have to endanger their lives for the security of this country, but it should be stopped.
Tens of thousands of ultra-Orthodox Jewish protesters streamed to Jerusalem on Thursday, demonstrating against efforts to conscript seminary students into Israel's armed forces.
So they are in war with each other too. Oh my God, I don't know. It's so hard for me to understand this. I don't know why.
Between these two groups are the religious Zionists. Unlike the Haredim, they are deeply committed to the state and strongly represented in the military. But their vision of Israel is not secular. They think that the land was given to Jews by divine right and that Israel is a religious project. They have risen to power through people like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir and are at the forefront of settlement expansion.
These elected representatives of the religious far right took office at the beginning of 2023.
Look at them. I hope all of you die. Yeah.
Netanyahu entered an alliance with them to come back as prime minister.
They're ugly. They are ugly. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're ugly. Look at yourself in the mirror.
לעודד אותם ללכת מכאן, והורשתם את יושבי הארץ. זה שלנו מאז ולתמיד.
Tensions and violence in the occupied West Bank, already high, have been rising further.
Their rhetoric and policies made the carefully cultivated image as a liberal democracy increasingly difficult to buy. All these groups are not just culturally different, they live in different delusions of what the settler colony is. And this exploded in 2023.
For months, millions of progressive Israelis took to the streets to fight what they called a coup d'etat.
In early 2023, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu introduced sweeping judicial reforms that would weaken the Supreme Court.
שהמהפכה המשטרית הזאת נשענת במדינת ישראל על תנועה גזענית, פשיסטית, בן גביר, סמוטריץ', אנשים שרואים בעצמם עליונים מעצם זה שהם יהודים, עליונים על כל מי שהוא לא יהודי ועליונים על כל מי שהוא לא מספיק יהודי או לא יהודי כמוהם.
Now this connection between Israel and the right wing is crazy. Fascism, Nazism, hated Jews. So what's now all this love between Jews and the right wing of politics? What's going on? That something is wrong there, I think.
For months, Israel looked like a society on the brink of internal rupture.
Now there are signs that more secular Israelis are considering leaving the country, with one recent poll suggesting 1 in 3 Israelis.
I will not raise my kids in a country which is not democratic.
In the long term, if the situation will be so bad, it's worsening every day, we will find a place to live outside Israel. We all have European passports.
Then October 7th, and with it, one of the most powerful forces that sustained settler colonies returned to the center: the fight for survival. It's important to note that despite all their differences, The overwhelming majority of Jews in Israel believe in the dispossession of Palestinians and the colonization of their land, regardless of what they identify as. Settler colonies are born through violence. It's the intrinsic DNA of this society, and it's the only thing that can restore unity between them when everything else starts falling apart. In many ways, the occupation has always functioned as the one unifying project of Israeli society. And the Gaza genocide took this to a whole other level.
Oh my God.
The violence unleashed by Israeli settlers defies description.
Oh my God, piece of shit.
The war was not just with Hamas, the war with all the civilians.
Today is 10 times worse than
Oh
yesterday.
my God,
100
their
times
bodies.
worse than the first day. Gaza is collapsing.
I can hear Hamas being pulverized, and it's the greatest sound I've ever heard in my life.
Bitch.
The images are burned into the world's memory. And throughout it all, the majority of the settlers not only participated, but they cheered it on.
We were looking for babies, but there is no babies left.
What babies? Say that again.
In doing so, Israel revealed its moral collapse to the entire world, isolating the colony more and more as a pariah on the global stage. But isolation has its own effect. The more the world recoiled, the more Israeli society retreated into a siege mentality, a belief that survival depended on unity against this hostile outside world. And that instinct pushed the settlers to band together, even as their society fractured from within. This is why war has always been so essential to Israel, because it's the only thing that can bring the Jewish settlers together. It's the artificial heartbeats required to keep the corpse alive.
This war is so highly popular in Israeli public opinion, or in Jewish Israeli public opinion. 93% of the Israelis support this war. In no democracy, there is such a figure in a survey about any kind of question. And this comes after 2.5 years of another war.
What we have is a collapse. A social collapse. It's also psychological collapse. It has to do with the fact that Israelis have...
Look at this. This is crazy.
...connection with reality.
There is a trend here. And the trend is towards the collapse of Zionism.
And all of this is not just bad for the soul of a nation. It's also bad for business. The Israeli economy was already bad before the genocide in Gaza, and only got worse after, with tens of thousands of businesses going bankrupt, tourism stopping, Israel's credit score lowered, and foreign investments withdrawing. The economy is also held together mostly by the secular Jews and the high-tech industry, many of whom are emigrating and leaving the country, for their safety and out of fears that Israeli democracy is dying. The judicial overhaul that got people in the streets months before would also have majorly hurt the economy by making Israel a place unsafe for businesses to operate in. One Israeli economist called it the end of democracy and almost the end of the world. And their economy was hurt from the outside too, through boycotts, divestments, and disruptions to their business.
Israel's only southern port on the Red Sea, the Eilat port, is at a standstill, hit hard by Houthi attacks linked to the Gaza war.
The cost of this war is already running into billions. In Israel, the economy is partially shut down, and Washington is also pouring millions of dollars every day into military operations.
The big story in the end is what people believe. Their economic crisis is something that happens to a lot of countries, but the difference is that in Greece or in Argentina, nobody said, okay, well, this country or this state will not exist anymore. We should think about a different state now. Well, maybe there's going to be a new currency. Maybe there's going to be a new policy. Maybe there's going to be a tough period of time and then some recovery. But when we're talking about what individuals are thinking, if they don't believe in a future. If they see this as the end, then the capitalist logic is such that there is no future. Instead, they take out their money and leave. And this is the self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well, now, you went there, you fought for what? Now you wanna leave? That would be like, My God.
The irony is that the settler colony is built on stories of surviving extermination, from ancient times to Nazi Germany to today's world that they believe is constantly threatening them. Their narrative frames destruction as something that comes from the outside. And yet, the unraveling we see today is largely self-inflicted. They undermine their own institutions, oversee their own corruption, sow discord amongst their own people, and launch genocidal campaigns that murder hundreds of thousands and destroy both their own humanity and their legitimacy in the world. They do all that in the name of remaining on what they claim is their land, while at the same time grabbing their second passport and fleeing the very homeland they claim is essential for their survival. Somewhere beneath the surface, the settlers know the project cannot last forever. And rather than face that reality, the anxiety it produces is channeled into constant war. Because it brings them together, because it's profitable, because it serves the interests of outside powers. But the more they thrash and fight, and the more they fall apart, the closer they bring the colony to its own inevitable collapse.
Wow, this was very interesting. I didn't react that much because I almost wanted to learn. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my channel, hit the like button, and I'll see you next time. Bye!